we're on now. Okay, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of what I'm going to be calling Table Talk under Tech Talk. Yeah. Basically, what's going to be happening here is we're just going to have talks on the table. Bring a topic, we discuss it. Obviously, it's something tech related. And today I have a guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Andrew Banda. Andrew, please go on and introduce yourself and what you do too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Banda. I have a background in computer science, but I have currently diverted more into digital communication and digital marketing. And I'm currently studying a bachelor's degree in development studies at the University of Zambia. I have been working in the digital media field for the past 6 years, since 2014. So I've been around in that field for a while.
Okay. Funny how you introduce the guest, but you don't introduce yourself. My name is Jonathan Nindi. I'm the host of Table Talk. I also have a background in computer science. In fact, me and Andrew were actually at the same institution. That's Evelyn Horn. And ironic so that we were even part of the computer association that we had at Evelyn Horn. And he was the president and I was his communications manager. So yeah, we know how to communicate and keep in touch.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So what we're discussing today is basically the future of work. The title is The Future of Work because this is March. This month actually marks a year since the pandemic started. Well, in Zambia anyway, since we had our first case in March. And so it's been a year, and what we're doing today is just looking forward, what work will look like post-COVID, or well, maybe in a year's time, or even 2-3 years ahead, and so that's basically what we're discussing today. We're discussing the future of work, and I felt Mr. Andrew Banda, with his experience, would help us dissect that topic. So we'll be going right into it right now. So, Mr. Banda, your experience since the disruption of COVID, how did it hit you and your work environment and things like that? Maybe give us a rundown.
I think when COVID hit Africa and Zambia to be particular, it was in the first years, like when most companies and NGOs close at the end of December for industrial break, and then they come back in January. So February, March is those are the months where you are touching base and you really, really want to sort of get out there. So when the disruption came, I think it disrupted a lot of plans, and just when you're getting started. And through it all, I think in Zambia, we've been half prepared, I think, I'd say. Half prepared, and it's something which I think in our minds were like, this will go away pretty quickly, and we'll be back to normal. Everyone wanted to get back to normal, so they didn't even take the time, neither did they want to take the time to sit down and plan and see what will happen if it doesn't go away or if we don't go to normal. So for a lot of us, we stayed in that bubble of disbelief, if I can say it, call it that, for a while before we eventually started adapting to the current situation and trying to see how we can do the work which we did before in a new way.
What about the whole, working from home thing? Was that something you were doing before, or it was just like boom. Oh, okay, so now we'll have to go and work from home. you know?
For us, it was boom. Now you have from home. I remember it was our board who advised that we need to start working from home because the cases were starting to go up. And I remember I think we were not prepared. We were just like, in fact, if I do remember correctly, for us, we went on leave.
Ah,
We went
okay.
on leave where we were not working. So we were not working for a good 1 month plus.
You
And
guys
then,
have a nice job. Bro. 1 month simusebenza.
so after that, it was like, okay, guys, I think we need to start working. So we started working from home. But even though we were in leave, when work called, we used to work here and there, but mostly and generally the feel at that particular moment was we're going on leave and we'll see what happens after 1 month. 1 month went by and then we're like, okay, maybe add 2 weeks, and then it wasn't getting better, and then we just decided to start adapting to the current situation.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's from your experience and that's the worker's experience. I personally, when it hit, well, my job description has more of it's more of field work. So, when it hit, they were just like, okay, so we can't have these physical meetings we used to have before.
Wear a mask.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I remember the first time, like, the months after it hit, I remember I was actually buying, I actually like was organizing to get a mask from somebody that makes masks and things like that. And I remember getting my first mask, and you would walk around with a mask and everyone's just looking at you like, hey, wamini you? Like, as if they're maning, yeah, because it wasn't mandatory.
I remember the first time I wore a mask. It was just like it was like days before we went on leave. And I was passing through in there and they were like, now and then we turn a COVID. And I was,
You can imagine, eh? Yeah, so like for personally, my experience was obviously the physical meetings had to stop, and now they would actually advise you'd have your meetings virtually and things like that. But for my nature of work, it's field work, so you still have to go out there. You still have to go out there and just pray, well, I just hope I don't get it. And it did disrupt a few things, because now it just wasn't the usual. Everybody was now scared, and you're just like, stay home, man, stay home. But this is from a worker's experience, and that was our experience as employees, as workers. I mean, hypothetically speaking, what was going on in the boardroom, like on the employer's side of things, like what do you imagine was going on the employer's side of things? I mean, this thing just hit, and you have all these restrictions and things like that.
I think as well, it depends on the type of industry which we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the NGO field, for example, maybe a couple of a few things which might be going through their mind would be how do we still manage to deliver on what we promised our funders on which we deliver?
Yeah.
Will our funders still stick with us through this period? Because other funders will be like, oh, you're not doing anything, so we'll get back can we get back the money? So from that, I think that will be from the employer side, that will be some worries to be like, how do we still continue hitting the targets even in this period, because we have set targets, we have set deliverables, and we have to deliver. Otherwise, we have to give back the money. From, I think, the SME's point of view as well, you're looking at how do I sell? If I do not sell, if I do not do business, there is no money to pay employees, and waste, when things go to waste, there is no money to keep the business afloat. And we've heard a couple of stories, I think, during this period where SMEs down or had to let go of some people so that they could just stay afloat. So I think from bosses' side, they were trying to walk a thin line and balance certain things as well to make sure there is continuity of their enterprise. So that's something which I would think was going on from the boss's side, as well in their mind thinking about this person should not contract COVID-19. It was aside from trying to keep aside from trying to keep the business afloat, you are looking at the health of this person and you want to make sure that they are healthy. I had a call from someone who, when COVID-19 just started, they were like, no, we are afraid, because there were a lot of fear in the beginning. We are afraid. They're not letting us go on leave. We want to go on leave because we want to catch corona. So that's from the employee's side, but from the employer side, they're looking at, if I let you go, I have to fire you because the business has to, keep going. And if we close for even a day, we are out of business and we are broke and we have to close down. So I think there are a lot of variables which had to be balanced out.
Yeah, because it's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, how and more so, the person who is both the employer and the employee, as is the case here, because you look at people that maybe are marketeers, or maybe they just do, an informal job that basically requires you to have that interaction with the customer, and if all of a sudden the customer is not able to be seen, they are being advised to stay home, how do you survive that? So there was a lot of confusion, and I think on both ends you just see, okay, so everybody's trying to adapt to see how they can adapt to the new normal, and still try and keep life normal, keep work flowing, and things like that. And like personally for me, these were things like Zoom, Skype. Well, my job basically involves a lot of field work, so those are not things I would touch. But even before, there were things those were like executive tools. You'd hear your boss saying, "Oh, have a Zoom meeting with somebody up there," and Skype and things like that. But then Corona just brought it down. Like, everybody now was like, you have to learn how to use Zoom. It's not an executive tool anymore. So that as well. So anyway, looking at the disruption, this is a year later. We're basically going to like try and dissect how the workplace is going to be like after COVID, or a year in. What does it look like? And things like that. Obviously, we ought to start with the office space, because when COVID hit, some of the restrictions that were brought in were as a result of a study saying that, as long as people are not moving, the virus is also not moving. So there's the issue of that interaction that needs to be inhibited and restricted and things like that. And so there was that call for, don't leave home if you have to. I mean, if you don't have to leave home, don't leave home. Don't go to places. Basically, don't move so that the virus doesn't move. And so now we have to reconstruct or rethink the workplace, because before, you had a scenario where the workplace is where you spend 8 hours of your day, but then now all of a sudden they're saying, You can't go and start staying there for 8 hours. Somebody will come and sneeze, and then that thing will be passed on to you. And so all of a sudden we have a scenario where that workspace, your cubicle or whatever you want to call it, is no longer there. You're now at home in front of a PC connected to the internet, and now that's where your work is. Your experience on how that shift now, like, just came in, like, after the disruption. Your experience.
I think it was pretty half and half. I think my experience can be maybe summed up into things which I've going forward, which I've noticed, and I think I'll explain them in this way and maybe bring out some points which I want to bring out. I think the first part which was realized and what this pandemic brought to especially African countries and Zambia in particular is for your employees to be ICT literate.
Yeah.
In that way, it's very easy to do work online.
Yeah.
That not even online, but remote kind of work, because you have times when someone is out of office or they're somewhere very far. How can they work? And I think the issue of making sure that your employees are ICT literate has come in as something which is very big, and something as well which has, I hope employers have noticed, is the need to have not one IT person.
Yes.
I
Thank
think
you for that.
most most NGOs what's the word, like guilty of this, because they would get one IT person and then everything is on them.
Yeah.
But I think what pandemic showed, because essentially during this period, the ICT person became sort of like the cornerstone
Oh yeah.
of
Oh
most
yeah.
organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and they were running life right, left, center. So I think that showed that organizations and companies really need to invest in their ICT infrastructure and in their ICT personnel. That's something which I hope they realize, and something which will be supported in the new normal. The next thing which I can talk about is, which is related actually, but I'll frame it as mental health. I think mental health is something which is very big and very real, especially for people who are working from home, because there's a lot of stress. So having plan on how to make sure that the mental state of your employees are in shape, so that if their mental state is in shape, they will impact or do work better. Because when they're in a disturbed mental state, if they're depressed, if they're going through several mental issues, you find that it's very hard for them to work, and they become increasingly low. So I think mental health, if we're talking about remote work, is something which has to be taken into consideration. It has to be taken into consideration in any ways, because I think mental health is becoming a challenge for our generation. But I think the pandemic shed a much bigger light on on mental health, and how we just don't have to look at the tech side of things, but we also have to look at the human who is doing the work. So I would say those have been my three biggest things which I've noticed, and which I hope will be adopted for many organizations. Because I think if people want to work in the new normal, we have to be deliberate. It just won't happen. Otherwise, we'll go back to our old ways, and nothing will change, and it would have been all for nothing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually true because it's like you said, it's a wake up call, and now all of a sudden the ICT guy becomes the most important person, and human resource as well. You can imagine because now, oh, okay, so we need to take care of our employees. Oh, so now the IT guy is very important,
Yeah,
and things like that. So yeah, that is true because that's actually part of my next point because it's basically we're looking at digital acceleration, because I think there are certain skills that we just said, okay, use them once in a while and things like that. When you're not sure about how to do certain things, you just call the IT guy. But now you're at home, the IT guy is not there, and now all of a sudden
yeah.
you have to, like you have to up your game. There are deadlines, there are things that are needed for you to complete. So maybe you can also talk about the traditional job roles, uh, those roles in industries where, COVID just disrupted things, like it's not the same anymore. Like you can't, certain people just seemed not to be important anymore because now, I mean, it felt like COVID had sort of cut away certain people because you can't, like, you're able to do it via digital means or virtual means. Maybe you can shed a bit of light on certain job roles that you feel are traditional and that seem to have woken a lot of people up now, because for one, I can give an example of like tellers at a bank and things like that. When this thing hit, it was not easy for you to still have your job. Certain branches closed and things like that. So maybe just give a brief talk. Go. And we're back. Sorry, had a bit of a technical glitch there. Yeah, but we're back, and maybe we can just retrace my line of thought before we lost power. So I was talking about certain job roles that seem to have been literally eliminated due to the disruption via COVID. Because so I was giving an example of maybe, let's say, a teller, somebody who works as a teller in a bank. We've seen that slowly banks are also trying to, you know, um, go the digital route, and things like that. And so they want people to spend less time in the bank and things like that. And so when you look at somebody who works as, let's say, a teller, the fact that I'm doing everything on my smartphone, the bank won't see the need for still keeping that person there because, well, if they can do if they can transact and do whatever they want to do on their phone, then they don't really see the need for them to still be paying this person to do that job if they have an alternative that can be even less costly, you know? So your comment on that?
I think yes. With this was I think this was bound to happen whether we had COVID or not.
Yeah.
It's something. Uh, Work is increasingly changing,
Mm.
and it's evolving. And I think to a certain degree, us as people, we are just a bit resistant, but work is evolving and getting better and more efficient and more effective. And
Mhm.
that's a good thing. And of course, that means some odd jobs will fade away, but more new jobs will open up. Um, in the same example which you gave of the tailor,
Mhm.
you find that when the position closes, yes, someone loses employment, but the same bank will need more people on the digital end to make sure that their
Uh-huh.
infrastructure is
Uh-huh.
notched
Uh-huh.
and and everything is in shape.
Yeah.
So they might lose two tailors and maybe will hire five more IT people.
Wow.
So that
Mm.
necessarily mean that employment is going down, but employment is changing and employment is evolving. I was watching something which the Prime Minister of Singapore said of how they recognize the fact that work is always changing, and
Mhm.
with them deliberate enough to make sure that in the lifetime of people's employment, there's always training of what's coming up so that these are not left behind when it comes to skills, and they can always be competitive as the work scenario is changing. So it's something which we as a people as well can look towards to say, okay, work is changing. We need to make sure that the employees that are currently in the market are still competitive enough to the new environment. But if we say and we get resistance, I think change will happen whether we give it consent or not. But we can be ready for it.
Yeah, true. And I think staying on I guess basically you've just highlighted that the IT people are now, they're on the spotlight. We are slowly becoming the most important assets.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. Don't get all happy. There are other people as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so maybe we can also maybe, I mean, zero in on that, because I sort of feel like, it's like we spoke about digital acceleration in the beginning, and the pandemic has literally the rate at which, there are things that you were looking at to say maybe in the next 4 years, maybe in the next 5 years, but because of the pandemic, that period has been cut down to months. It's really been cut down to a very short period of time, and you've experienced such a very fast acceleration rate as compared to, pre-COVID, when we were thinking, well, this will probably take 10 years, this will probably take 20 years, and things like that. And so, like you said, change of work will happen, whether we give it consent or not. You either change, or change will change you. And
Yeah.
so now what you're looking at now is, like survival. You need to have the relevant skill set to stay relevant. Like, it's now adapt or die. In essence, that's what it is. It's either you adapt, or, well, you're taken out of the system. And so, I mean, looking at that, do we I know it was a wake-up call for a lot of organizations and businesses and things, and I think the world over, especially Africa. It was a wake-up call. Like, we really need to invest in infrastructure and in the skill set of our employees going forward. Maybe the question now is, are we really investing? Do we have, I mean, I think that's a very general topic, and maybe we can start at the business level before we go to, like, country level and things like that. But at business level, are we investing in that IT infrastructure that we need going forward?
At this level, maybe from the NGO side, I think from the NGO side, I think we are not necessarily taking it serious enough. I think from the NGO side, people are still hoping that everything will get back to normal and we can get back to how we've done things always. From the business side, I think for them, more critical, because they need to find new ways of making money, and so how to diversify their income stream and how to make sure that the income keeps coming in is very important to them. So I think for them it will be much more important, I think, and I think and I hope to them they will forge ahead to invest in innovating the way they do things, because for them it's much more critical that they innovate and they find new ways of doing things. I can't say exactly that I have seen a lot of investment in this area. something which I'm hoping there'll be a shift, but I'm yet to be surprised about the shift which has happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, hope, I mean, you and me both hope that we can get to that point where I think they see that need and they actually, put money aside to invest in the IT infrastructure. So that's a business level. Let's look at it on a country level, on a national level. Zambia, are we investing in that infrastructure? I've heard of, I remember when I was still back in school, I don't know about you, but I heard of the e-government program that was started. You are aware of that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's I think one of the directions that the republic has put forth to like slowly integrate technology in the running of government programs and things like that. So are we investing on a national level? What do you think?
Yes and no.
Mhm.
No, in that I think the pandemic has shown us that there is a lot of people who are marginalized when it
Mhm.
comes to access to technology in Zambia.
Mhm.
I think when it comes to investment in technology, we've been too Lusaka centric, where Lusaka, there's a boom in investment. There are a few places in Lusaka where I can't have my 4G network. I'm always on 4G. If it drops less than 4G, I'm like, no, Airtel, I hate you. But there are people, you know, there are people who have, what's that network? Plus two? Is it 2G? Even 4G.
2G.
There are people who have less, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and most don't even have a network. So
Yeah.
I think the pandemic found that there is a lot of inequality when it comes to technology development in the country,
Yeah.
and we have not catered for a lot of people who should have access to this technology. Because if we're talking about taking Zambia online,
Yeah.
how do we take Zambia online when the majority of our citizens cannot access internet? How do we
Mm.
adapt to the pandemic? The majority of citizens cannot access such services.
Mhm.
So I think in that sense, the pandemic hasn't really shown that we are not investing, but the pandemic has shown that there's a lot of inequality when it comes to such investment, and that there's a lot of people who are marginalized and have no access to such resources. And when I would say yes, I think generally it's been government's plan and government's direction to slowly develop the ICT infrastructure.
Yeah.
So my yes is lazily because I think the pandemic has not really pushed them to double or triple invest or push up their timeline. I think it's pretty much they're stuck to the same timeline of rolling out
Yeah.
network towers and slowly doing this. Those timelines have not moved up. Where I would have expected that because of the
Yeah.
pandemic, they would have said, okay, we need to divert a lot of funds into this sector because we need people to adapt, we need people to access these uh, information, because you had university students who are going back to their village where there's no network and they're telling them school platform.
Yeah.
How can they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think you're right. One point I'll pick from what you just said is like you said, there's that is the margin really came out when COVID hit, because I remember they had put up there was even a channel that was dedicated to, is it education? There was a channel that was actually opened on DSTV
Yes.
for sort of to cater for the kids, an education channel. But then again, you know, you ask the critical questions to say, well, not everyone has DSTV, you know, and for those that are in universities and colleges and things like that, you would say, okay, so now we're all going to be learning online. Not everybody can afford to go that route, you know. So yes, I agree with you. It's a yes and no. And yes, there's a lot to do, you know. There's too a
Yes.
lot
Yeah.
that has to, you know, has to be done, because we seem to be very resistant to change. You still want to maintain the same timelines, even when clearly you can see the world has jumped 10 years ahead. You are still saying, no, we shall still do 12 years. We are okay. We are on the right track. So recently, we
Yeah.
was it last year when we had the seventh national development plan, is it? And of late, there was talk of an eighth
Yeah.
national plan. Not sure what's going to be different between the two. Do we need a national plan for technology? Do you think we need a national plan for
I
technology?
I think yes and yes. Generally, I think plans are very important for uh, directing resources towards critical areas where we need to address certain things. So plans are very, very important. But I think it's something where some people have come out and said when it came to, because all the national development plans are based on the Vision 2030,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and you know how technology sort of, you know, it's getting shorter. Like technology innovation is getting more and more.
Yeah,
The period will be like 20 years, then 10 years, then 5 years, then
yeah.
2 years. So when it comes to these plans, they're not catching up. Again, it's coming back to the timelines. They're not
Mm.
catching up fast enough. In this plan, there's no way to sort of visualize in a way where the things which we said we wanted to do in 10 years, we've done them in 2 years, then what?
Yeah,
You know, so I think when it comes to these plans are very, very important, the national plans.
yeah.
But I think we need to make sure that we don't under target or over target, but target just enough. And our
Mm.
plans need to be dynamic enough to realize that things have changed and certain things need to be readapted to the new age. So I think we are dealing with a plan which was developed in what, 2006, 2005,
Okay,
somewhere there.
okay.
Yes, that's the vision. So while some other things might remain the same and they still need to be done and they still need to be achieved, when we're talking about the technology sector, you find that things have changed. New type of technologies out. There are new
Yeah.
priorities in technology,
Mm-hmm.
which we need to set up. Yeah, there are other things which have to be the backbone of our ICT infrastructure. So I again, not to be very, I'm not very certain, but I don't think we are very dynamic enough when it comes to the plans on
Mm-hmm.
ICT
Yeah.
in Vision 2030 national development plans.
Okay. Well, and while we are on the topic of a possible the plan for technology, I would say the Computer Association of Zambia and the ZICTA and all these other associations that are related to all things technology in nature, are they doing enough to help drive the so-called, you know, future of technology in this country? Your take?
I'd say doing enough. with what they have. That's me correct.
Yeah.
I'll say they're doing enough with the resources which they have.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something which has to come back to us citizens to say, should we restructure these institutions to reflect the kind of development progress and the pace of progress which we want to see, and for them to prioritize in certain areas? I think that's maybe a conversation which can be had around these institutions. But when it comes to what they're doing, I would say they're doing enough with what they have. And if we want them to change, then we have to start the conversations of how we want them to change and how we want them restructured, priorities we want them to focus on. So these are the conversations I think we'll pretty much need to start.
Yeah, I like what you said, to say they're doing enough, with what they have, because like we earlier noted, it's well, we're not really investing as much as we should in IT infrastructure. So, they can only do with what they have. I think obviously if you pump in more money, you shed more attention on such a cause, obviously more resources will be, diverted and directed to those to those institutions. So anyway, as we are winding down, going forward, how I want to start with three. I want to look at things at three levels, because you obviously have to start at the individual level, and you're looking at probably business level, and then you go out and say the country level. At the individual level, looking at the disruption, the wake-up call that all of us have had, going forward, what should be our mindset approaching the dynamics of work post-COVID?
I think at individual level, it's innovation. It's something which I wouldn't necessarily say that we lack in our generation. You talk about the millennials and the Gen Z. I think when it comes to innovation, I think this is something which our generation and the generation following us have in abundance. But I think what we lack is sort of directed innovation. How direct your innovation so that your innovation works for you, and what to direct it on. So I think we pretty much have the creativity and innovation part of it. What we really need to work on is discipline on how to get what we have to make it work for us. And most of the time, I know our generation above us is always like, you guys are lazy, but I have I think I have been around and seen what our generation and the generation following us is doing. Nothing but lazy. We are very innovative, but I think it's planning for your innovation and directing your innovation for it to work for you. Especially during this pandemic, we have to be very strategic on how we are going to use our innovation, on how we're going to use our creativity. Because if anything should be said about us, I think we are the only people who can survive this pandemic. I mean, our other generations don't know how to use computers.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true.
that speaks volumes already, because we would be able to survive such a thing. So I think on an individual level is directing your innovation and your creativity so that it works for you.
Yeah.
On a company business level, I would say it's finding the right balance the right formula for how to work with your employees and to how to get productivity out of your employees. One thing which the pandemic has also shown us is that not everyone, but most of the jobs can be done out of the office.
Yeah.
Like you don't
Yes.
necessarily need to be in the office to do certain jobs, and they
Mm-hmm.
can be done out of the office, and your whole day opens up. That this pandemic has shown us that work can be done outside the office, and I think for businesses, this is something which they can leverage on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can even take their business to the cloud and just say,
Yeah.
guys, we'll be meeting at this cafe meetings every Monday. And then afterwards, work from wherever as long as the work is done.
Yeah.
Because at
Yeah.
the end of
Yeah.
the day, you're looking at outputs. So I think we should be very output oriented
Yeah.
and make it for us, because if everyone is not coming to the office and you just have one person at the office, you can even have a whole house and several businesses just have it registered, and there's just one person there to make sure to receive guests and all that, and
Yeah.
everyone is working from home. That saves on cost. So I think we can be very, very creative and innovative on how we can do work, and work can be very productive. Work can be very fun. Um, I'm always of I'm a firm supporter and a firm believer that work should be fun.
Yeah.
And
It is.
when work is not fun, I'm always sad, because I enjoy what I do, and I think it should the onus should be on the employers as well to make sure that people enjoy what they're doing,
Yeah.
because if you enjoy what you're doing, you will do it even better
Yeah.
every day. That's
Effortlessly.
something. Yeah. On the national level, I think we need the infrastructure. I think this just cannot be emphasized enough. We just
Mm-hmm.
need the infrastructure to cover the entire country,
Yeah.
to make sure that left behind. Because if there's something, again, coming back to our generation, is once the environment is set, we'll take advantage of the environment. So I
Mm-hmm.
think if the national government can prioritize making sure that the infrastructure is complete to cover every part of Zambia, the young people will take the reins and they will make innovative things out of even the things which they never imagined. So I think once the environment is set, we'll see a lot of innovation. So I cannot, that's the only thing which I can emphasize on the national level, to say, just set the environment and we'll do the rest. You don't need to give us anything. Just make sure the environment is right, and we'll develop this country. We'll change this country.
Yeah.
Innovation which is coming works for the people and works for our country.
Yeah, yeah. Just to point out what you just said. You're right. Environment is really really important because for some of these icons in the tech industry, you talk about Bill Gates and you talk about all these others. They had the environment was very ripe for them to actually have those dreams of saying, I'm gonna do this, and it, I mean, there are policies put in place. The environment just makes it easy for you to be able to do what you want to do, and like you rightly said, let them just give us that platform that make the environment conducive, and we can also explode. And we
You
can.
can have someone who's like in Shangombo trying to create an artificial intelligence software, but or machine learning software, but they're not connected to the internet. What is it going to learn on? So
Exactly.
I think the environment is very important to to the progress which we want to put forth.
Yeah, that's true. And this is not to bash, the current government to say they're not doing enough, but we're basically just making a call to say, I think this disruption has showed us that we actually do need to invest enough, like invest a lot actually in IT infrastructure, because unless you live under a rock, technology is the future. Like the future has a lot of technology in it. So for you to sort of say no, as you live under a tree, you know you just be left behind and swept away, and things like that. So yeah, that thank you for those insights on I think it's also just a call for people at an individual level also to say, you need to be computer literate. Okay, not only computer literate, but you should be able to possess those basic digital skills. Get yourself into a small program that can teach you about how you can utilize ICT in your workplace, or even in day-to-day things, because like I said before, the future has technology in it. So if you are going to say no, me, I just know how to put a date stamp on paper, you'll be shocked. We'll be scanning QR codes in the future. you know
Funny thing about that, mom was always like, "Oh, you guys, you're always on your phones. You're always on your phones." Now she has a smartphone, and I brought internet at home, and she's forever on Facebook Watch, watching videos.
See?
Who's on their phone now?
you know and that's the thing, like the old folks spend a lot of time on their phones. You're like, okay. you know so yeah, so anyway, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining me. And I think this is the beginning of many talks that we'll be having, concerning a lot of other topics. I really wanted us to zero in on this because work is going to be different in the next few years. So I thought it would be something that we would look at, dissect, and yeah, I think we've done we've done that. What we didn't comment on, other people can bring in topics and things like that, but I think we've touched on it, and I'm very grateful for you setting aside time to discuss. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of today's talk. We were basically discussing the future of work, and like I said, this was the first episode of this run of episodes that we're going to be having. I'll make it a habit to invite different guests to basically discuss topics of interest. Today we had Mr. Andrew Banda, and hopefully we can have him back again to discuss other topics of interest. But that's it from today. My name is Jonathan Nindi. I was joined by Andrew Banda, and yeah, that's it for today. So please subscribe to the channel, and yeah, see you next time. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.